Hollywood stars and mob bosses are two sides of the same coin. Both crave fame and power. But behind the scenes, mob bosses were the real directors, writing deadly scripts for stars and rivals alike. From screen legends to the bosses they feared, we're exposing the deadly price of getting into bed with the wrong people. Paul Castellano. Even the most powerful man in the American Mafia isn't safe when the wolves are at the door. Paul Castellano, known as Big Paul, was the boss of the Gambino crime family. He ruled with an iron fist, but lived like a corporate executive, wearing tailored suits and hosting celebrities at his Staten Island mansion, which he called the White House. But his underlings, led by an ambitious capo named John Gotti, saw him as greedy and out of touch. They decided it was time for a change in management. In December 1985, the world watched as Castellano was gunned down in front of Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan during the evening rush hour. The hit was so brazen, so public, it looked like a scene ripped straight from a gangster film. It was a coup, orchestrated by Gotti, who watched from a car across the street. The murder of a boss of his stature on a public street was almost unheard of, and it sent shockwaves through the criminal and celebrity worlds alike. Hollywood took note, and Castellano's assassination became the inspiration for decades of crime dramas. But Castellano wasn't the only New York boss whose arrogance wrote a check his body couldn't cash. Carmine Galante. Some mobsters just can't help but make enemies, and Carmine Galante, the ruthless boss of the Bonanno crime family, was one of them. Known as the Cigar for his ever-present stogie, Galante was notorious for his brutality and his insatiable appetite for power. He controlled a massive heroin trafficking empire and made it very clear he wasn't interested in sharing the profits with the other families. That kind of arrogance is a death sentence in his line of work. By 1979, the other New York bosses had had enough. The hit came in broad daylight, while Galante was enjoying lunch on the patio of a Brooklyn restaurant. 3 masked gunmen stormed in and blasted him to death with shotguns. The crime scene photo became one of the most famous in mob history. Galante, dead in his chair, with his trademark cigar still clamped between his teeth. It was a clear message that no one is untouchable. When you make yourself the main course, it's only a matter of time before someone decides to eat. That bloody lesson, however, wasn't new. It was perfected decades earlier, when celebrity itself was a new invention. Jack Legs Diamond. Long before Gotti and Galante, there was Jack Legs Diamond. A Prohibition-era gangster, Diamond was more than a criminal. He was a pop culture phenomenon. Handsome, daring, and seemingly impossible to kill, he earned the nickname the Clay Pigeon of the underworld after surviving at least 5 assassination attempts. He loved the high life, throwing lavish Broadway parties and rubbing shoulders with movie stars. But being too flashy was a fatal flaw. In 1931, just hours after being acquitted on yet another charge, Diamond's luck finally ran out. He was shot 3 times in the back of the head while passed out drunk in his Albany hideout. The killer was never caught, but everyone knew the mob had finally called time on his 9 lives. For a generation of Hollywood writers, Diamond's dramatic end became the blueprint for every gangster story with a flashy rise and a brutal fall. He proved the old saying, "You can't outrun your reputation." While Diamond built his empire on illegal booze, the next generation of power brokers used something far more legitimate: unions. Jimmy Hoffa. When Jimmy Hoffa vanished in 1975, America didn't just lose a union boss, it gained its most enduring mystery. Hoffa was a celebrity in his own right. A man who advised presidents, dined with movie stars, and wielded immense power as the head of the Teamsters Union. He was a powerful friend to the Mafia, helping them secure loans from the union's pension fund to build their Las Vegas empire. But after a stint in prison, Hoffa tried to muscle his way back into power, and the mob decided he was a problem that needed to disappear permanently. One summer afternoon, Hoffa went to a meeting at a Detroit area restaurant and was never seen again. No body, no note, no closures. The FBI has spent decades digging up empty fields, but all they've found is legend and rumor. Was he buried under Giants Stadium? Crushed in a car compactor? His disappearance became the ultimate cautionary tale for power players everywhere. Play with the mob, and you might just vanish without a trace. Hoffa's money built a kingdom in the desert, but running that kingdom was a job for men who understood that loyalty was a commodity and betrayal was policy. Gus Greenbaum. If Hoffa was the bank, Gus Greenbaum was one of the key men on the ground. A mob boss with a head for numbers, Greenbaum was the bridge connecting Chicago's money to Las Vegas's casinos. He ran the Riviera and later the Flamingo, making friends with movie stars and living like a king with the Chicago outfit's blessing. But Greenbaum had a weakness for drugs and gambling, and soon the mob suspected he was skimming more than his fair share and making deals with rival families. In December 1958, the mob cashed in his chips. Greenbaum and his wife, Bess, were found brutally murdered in their Phoenix home. Their throats had been slashed with a butcher knife. The violence was a public spectacle, a bloody warning to anyone in Vegas or Hollywood who thought they could cross the outfit. Suddenly, the high rollers and movie stars knew that in the mob's world, ambition could get you killed. Greenbaum's murder became a chilling blueprint for tales of mob betrayal, a reminder that in Vegas, the house always wins, one way or another. While Greenbaum handled the books, another man handled the dirty work. Anthony the Ant Spilotro. You can't talk about the dark side of Vegas without mentioning Anthony the Ant Spilotro. A real-life mob enforcer for the Chicago outfit, Spilotro made Vegas and Los Angeles his personal playground. He wasn't just a gangster, he was a celebrity in his own right, even serving as a consultant for crime movies. But his brutal methods and growing ego started to attract too much attention from the FBI. He was bringing more heat than profit, and his boss's patience wore thin. In 1986, Spilotro and his brother Michael vanished. Days later, they were discovered buried in an Indiana cornfield, having been beaten and buried alive. It was a particularly gruesome end, even by mob standards, meant as a clear warning to others. The story became legend, immortalized in the movie Casino, which borrowed heavily from Spilotro's wild, reckless, and short career. For Hollywood, his death was a chilling reminder that while the underworld might inspire scripts, sometimes it writes them in blood. And the man Spilotro answered to was a master of blurring those lines. Sam Giancana. Some mobsters operate in the shadows. Sam Giancana was not one of them. As the boss of the powerful Chicago outfit, he was Hollywood's ultimate gatekeeper, pulling strings from Vegas to Los Angeles. Giancana rubbed elbows with everyone: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, even President John F. Kennedy. His Las Vegas parties were the stuff of legend, but his high-profile connections made him a high-profile target for both law enforcement and his rivals. By 1975, Giancana's luck had run out. He was scheduled to testify before a Senate committee about Mafia collusion with the CIA, promising to spill secrets no one wanted aired. Before he could take the stand, he was murdered in the basement kitchen of his own home, some say while cooking a late-night snack of sausages and peppers. He was shot 7 times in the head and neck. The execution was so precise, neighbors heard nothing. The hit was a classic mob message: silence isn't just golden, it's enforced. For Hollywood, Giancana's murder was a clear signal that the mob didn't just inspire the movies, they could erase anyone who threatened to reveal the script. And sometimes, that violence spilled directly onto the pristine carpets of Beverly Hills. Johnny Stompanato. Hollywood scandals don't come much messier than the death of Johnny Stompanato. A suave, impossibly handsome bodyguard for West Coast mob boss Mickey Cohen, Stompanato was the boyfriend of screen siren Lana Turner, one of the biggest stars in the world. Their romance was pure tabloid gold, fiery, passionate, and dangerously volatile. Behind the closed doors of Turner's pristine Beverly Hills mansion, however, it was a horror show of jealousy, beatings, and threats. The nightmare reached its climax on Good Friday, 1958. Stompanato was found stabbed to death on the floor of Turner's pink bedroom. The story that shocked the world was that Turner's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl, had plunged a kitchen knife into his stomach to defend her mother from another brutal attack. But this is Hollywood, and the truth is always up for debate. Rumors exploded. Did Turner kill him herself and let her daughter take the fall? Or did the mob, tired of Stompanato's high-profile antics, stage the whole thing to get rid of a loose cannon? The coroner ruled it a justifiable homicide, but the whispers never faded. Turner's career was forever tainted, and the story became a grim reminder that even for superstars, love can be a deadly game. Other stars would learn that lesson in much lonelier, darker places. Mineo. Sal Mineo was the kind of star you never forget. With haunting eyes and 2 Oscar nominations before he was 22, his role in Rebel Without a Cause alongside James Dean cemented him as a Hollywood icon. He had it all: fame, talent, and a future that seemed limitless. But on a February night in 1976, that future was stolen from him. Mineo was stabbed to death in a dark alley behind his West Hollywood apartment after returning from a play rehearsal. Police initially called it a random mugging gone wrong, but the public didn't buy it, and for good reason. Nothing of value was taken from him. Immediately, rumors of a mob connection began to swirl. Mineo had reportedly made enemies with some shady figures in the entertainment industry and had allegedly received threats before his death. Was he silenced after stumbling onto something he wasn't supposed to see? Or was it a shakedown that spiraled out of control? A man was eventually convicted for the murder, but his confession was questionable, and many still believe Mineo was killed for reasons only the underworld will ever know. His death sent a chill through Hollywood, a brutal lesson that not even Oscar nominees are safe when they cross paths with the wrong people. But no story better illustrates the fatal intersection of fame and crime than the man who tried to be king of both. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. It doesn't get more legendary than Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. He was the gangster who practically invented modern Las Vegas, a man who saw a glittering paradise in the middle of a barren desert. Siegel wasn't your typical back-alley thug. He was handsome, charismatic, and craved the spotlight as much as he did power. He partied with Hollywood royalty, counting screen legends like Clark Gable and Cary Grant among his friends, all while running brutal rackets for the mob. He thought he was untouchable, a king ruling over 2 worlds. But in the world of organized crime, every king has a target on his back. His big dream, the Flamingo Hotel, was hemorrhaging cash, the mob's cash, and his bosses were getting nervous. One balmy June evening in 1947, Siegel was relaxing in the Beverly Hills home of his glamorous girlfriend, reading the paper. In a flash, a hail of bullets from a .30 caliber M1 carbine ripped through the window, striking him multiple times and killing him instantly. One shot was so powerful, it blew his eye clear out of its socket. The message sent to Hollywood and the underworld was loud and clear. Nobody is untouchable. The murder was never solved, but the theories remain. Was it a hit, ordered by his childhood friend and boss, Meyer Lansky? Whatever the reason, Siegel's death proved that celebrity offers zero protection when you owe the wrong people money. And the woman whose home he died in was a story all her own. Virginia Hill. Her name was Virginia Hill, and she was the undisputed queen of the mob's Hollywood social scene. Dubbed the Flamingo's Lady, she wasn't just a gangster's girlfriend, she was a player. Hill was a trusted courier and money launderer for the Chicago outfit, moving cash and secrets between the coasts while sharing tables with icons from Frank Sinatra to Clark Gable. She knew everything, and that made her powerful. But when Bugsy Siegel was executed in her living room, she went from a powerful asset to a terrified liability. Sensing the walls closing in, Hill fled the United States, bouncing between Europe's lavish cities, always looking over her shoulder. The paranoia was justified. In 1966, she was found dead in a snowy field near Salzburg, Austria. The official cause was an overdose of sleeping pills, but mob watchers never bought it. There were too many loose ends, too many powerful men she could implicate. Was it a case of the mob cleaning house, silencing its most knowledgeable witness for good? Her death serves as a chilling warning to anyone who thinks they can outrun the Mafia's long memory. And that memory extends far beyond Hollywood, into places you'd least expect. Dino Bravo. The mob's reach isn't limited to the US. Dino Bravo was a celebrated professional wrestler, a powerhouse known as the Canadian Strongman. After retiring from the ring in the early 1990s, Bravo, who was related by marriage to a Montreal crime boss, needed a new gig. He got involved in a massive illegal cigarette smuggling operation, a lucrative business controlled by the Mafia in Canada. It was a bad move. Bravo was allegedly a big name used to bridge connections between the crime family and indigenous communities, whose sovereign land was used to move the contraband. But when a massive shipment was seized by police, Bravo was left on the hook for a huge debt. In March 1993, he was found dead in his home, shot 17 times at close range, with several rounds to the head. There was no forced entry, suggesting he knew his killers. It was a cold, calculated execution. Some say he knew too much. Others say he couldn't pay his debt. Either way, his story is a shocking reminder that the mob's rules are the same everywhere, whether in a boardroom, a back alley, or a wrestling ring.